reality that it's everywhere. We saw Pepsi is still in, it looked pretty fresh, so I wonder how long it's been there and how.
And the glass bottle.
Yeah, the glass bottle.
Yeah, so for viewers that are listening and tuning in, send in your questions while we're waiting to transit to waypoint 4. Do you know how long it'll take till we get there?
Probably somewhere between 30 minutes and an hour before we're ready to do science. It won't take us that long to get there, but there's a lot of momentum built up in the vehicles behind the thing that'll have to swing up and catch up to the ship and then get set up and establish contact with the bottom. So it's going to be a good little while before we're ready for science operations.
Okay, thank you, Brian.
And we're headed over to the slope of a ridge that is, and we'll be at 3,000 feet, and when we encounter the ridge, we'll just work our way up.
Yep. So we're on the west side of the Palau Trench here, and going to just continue to hold this depth and move over to where we intersect the depth contour at 3,000 meters, and then we'll make contact with the bottom and start exploring the seafloor on the way uphill, working our way closer to the main islands of Palau.
And is the ridge essentially an underwater mountain range, similar to many others we see on land with the slope that's driving the current up, which is what the animals are eating? So essentially this is like an underwater mountain range. Yeah,
so this is a fairly large ridge-like feature that stretches north to south. That's just on the west side of the trench.
And Brian, what are the little white objects we're seeing on the screen as the Hercules moves through the water at 3,000 meters? Could you describe for the listeners, the viewers in particular, what is all those? What are all those little white spots?
Who's talking in my ear? It's a whole lot of different things. There's at this depth, a lot of it's going to be just marine snow, but some of these things could be other small invertebrates. It could be chunks of mucus that were produced by different things and left behind. It could be other types of detritus just falling down from the seafloor. At this depth, it could be a lot of different things, and it's really hard to see just the little white dots darting across the screen to know what it is.
This is carrying organic material to the bottom, to the deepest part of the ocean, and providing a food source for a lot of those animals we see. Is that right?
That's exactly right. So in the deep sea below the reach of sunlight, there is, with a few exceptions, no in situ primary production. And that's just a fancy way of saying there's no photosynthesis, there's no carbon fixation, there's nothing in the water that's turning energy into organic carbon or food for things along the food chain to consume. So all of that food is raining down from the surface waters, and things along the way are feeding on these sinking particles, but that surface production also gets transported by vertically migrating animals. So every night there's a migration of pelagic animals, shrimp, squid, fish, anything you can think of that's swimming around in the water. They come up to the surface at night when it's dark to feed in relative safety, and they take advantage of the higher food levels in the surface waters, and then during the daytime they swim back down and in effect transport some of that carbon into deeper waters. That's what's called the biological carbon pump, and it's very important for global biogeochemical cycling and the balance of the Earth's different chemical budgets, particularly carbon.
And involves a huge number of animals. I was so impressed to learn from you, Harold, and from the other scientists on board that the migration of those little animals from deep in the ocean up to the surface at night and then back again in the daytime is the largest migration on Earth.
Yeah, certainly if you consider the number of animals participating in the migration, it's by far the largest. And we may not think of it as they're moving a great distance because it's, it's only, less than a kilometer of water. But, some of these things to a copepod, it's quite a long distance.
They're a little bitty
every
with
single day.
Well, they're little bitty with little bitty legs, and
Exactly.
they still make that trip back and forth.
Yeah, it's really interesting too when the hydrodynamics change when you go different scales. And so us moving through water, it feels pretty liquid and easy to push, but when you get down to be very small in the microscopic level, water becomes exceedingly hard.
Right.
And so it's a lot more comparable effort for something small like a copepod or an amoeba or something to move through water than it is for something of our size, due to a whole bunch of physics I don't understand, frankly.
Yeah, you get down to the high Reynolds number environment if you're a copepod.
That's a really interesting and important point, that for these animals, not only are they traveling a vast distance compared to their body size, it's extraordinarily difficult because at their body size, the water is more difficult for them to move through. That's a really important and interesting point.
Hey, Harold, what's a Reynolds number?
Oh boy, I shouldn't have even said it because I don't know
now
if I
you
could
opened yourself
explain it
on
too well. It's basically a measure of the viscosity of the water, or whatever fluid you're traveling to relative to the your body size, essentially. So if you're a copepod, swimming through seawater is more like if you were a person trying to swim through honey or molasses or something. And that gets into a lot of physics that I'm not a physicist, but if I grabbed my physical oceanography textbook, maybe I could try and explain it, but we don't have time for that.
Wikipedia says that it's a dimensionless quantity that helps predict fluid flow patterns at different situations by measuring the ratio between inertial and viscous forces. So as your body mass or mass of the object gets smaller, it has less inertia, and so it has the ratio of between the viscosity of the fluid and the inertia of the individual moving through it gets lower, making it harder.
Which makes that mass migration even more impressive, that those little animals are moving that far twice a day.
Absolutely.
It's extraordinary.
So we have a question about marine snow. Is too much production of marine snow ever a problem?
It can be. In certain areas where you have a huge bloom or something like that, and generally this is more of a shallower water problem than a deep sea, but you can have sedimentation, can't come with the word, accumulate, thank you, at a high enough rate that it can be problematic for deep sea organisms. Generally that's not just marine snow, that takes some kind of sediment input from land or something like that, but yeah, you run with too much particle mass raining down, filter feeding organisms can struggle kind of to keep themselves clean.
And there's a larger phenomenon that also, I mean, to say it's a problem is, I mean, these things exist on geologic timescales, but ocean oxygen minimum zones are these large areas of the ocean where there's sort of an imbalance between the amount of surface production raining down into the deep sea and the amount of oxygen, or the ventilation in the deep waters that delivers oxygen to the deep sea, that allows that carbon raining down to be metabolized. So in the eastern tropical Pacific, for example, for reasons we don't need to get into, a lot of physical oceanography, it's a very poorly ventilated part of the deep ocean. It's at the very end of this very long deep sea conveyor belt where oxygen essentially enters the water in the North Atlantic and then travels a long distance all the way to the eastern Pacific. And by the time it gets there, a lot of the oxygen has been used up. And if you have a bunch of phytoplankton raining down from the surface, microorganisms, animals are consuming that organic matter as it sinks down, using up more oxygen, and there's no way for that oxygen to be replenished because it's so far away from its ventilation source. And that leads to these large areas called oxygen minimum zones. And there's actually animals that are specially adapted to live in these zones. They're not necessarily unnatural or bad. But one of the consequences of climate change is the expansion of these oxygen minimum zones for a couple of different reasons. But yeah, there's quite a bit to talk about now that we're just hanging out in the blue water column. This is, you know, these ROV dives are great for looking at the seafloor, but 99.999 whatever % of the habitable living space on Earth is just what you see in front of you, just dark water.
Are those oxygen depleted zones carried in the current farther north or south from here, where they would be, for example, turned over by the cold water at the either Antarctic or in the north in the Arctic Sea?
So the zones typically stay in one place because the occurrence of an oxygen minimum zone is determined by essentially those two factors of surface primary productivity and ventilation of oxygen below. And those are those can be relatively stable on a large spatial scale. So they don't they do expand and contract seasonally, but they don't necessarily change latitudinally all that much.
Yeah, as the water moves out of the area that is considered the oxygen minimum zone, you know, it mixes with other water and gets, the conditions change, and just from diffusion alone sometimes you get oxygen returning to that water mass as it moves away from the area that had the conditions that forced it into a low oxygen condition. But it is one of the scarier and probably less kind of broadly known consequences of climate change is that some of the expectations for the increases in size of the oxygen minimum zones are really quite scary. Some areas that might affect places that are very important fisheries, like off the coast of Peru and places like that, some models have the oxygen minimum zone growing quite a bit in future climate states.
And the oxygen depletion is a direct result of a side effect of the carbon dioxide increase in the atmosphere?
No, it's more of a change in thermohaline circulation and some of the other larger scale current movements that are driven by temperature in other places and how much water is downwelled and sinks ventilating the deep sea and stuff like that, as well as the amount of primary production that occurs. So in some ways,
ultimately the results of this increase in greenhouse warming.
Has the effect of changing the way the ocean currents themselves operate.
Right.
And Brian, I thought you told a particularly fascinating story yesterday about you were in a submersible somewhere, either you said somewhere on the East Coast, and could you describe for the audience that may be joining us for the first time today? It's just a great story, the size, scale of that migration of small organisms, what effect that had when they hit an underwater canyon.
Yeah, certainly. So we were, I wasn't in the submersible. I've actually never been in a submersible. I've always done robotic work, but we were off the coast of the mid-Atlantic or New England, in the Atlantic. I don't remember exactly which canyon it was. It was probably Wilmington or Hudson Canyon. These geovertical migrating organisms that come up from 800 to 1,000 meters almost to the surface during the night and then go back down, they can get concentrated in these canyons. So when you've got an incised submarine canyon that cuts into the continental shelf, the organisms come down and get deeper and deeper and get funneled and channeled in together because they're trying to avoid the bottom. They don't want to run exactly into the bottom, but they also want to get as deep as possible, and so they can get super concentrated in the valleys of these canyons. And we were exploring one of them with the ROV Deep Discoverer, and came upon this mass of all these little fish and small squid and organisms, all kinds of different things. It was so thick we could barely see, a few meters in front of the vehicle, and it was an absolute feeding frenzy. The benthic anemones and stuff like that were catching fish out of the water column. There were bigger fish eating the smaller fish that were concentrated. It was really an amazing sight.
What depth was that, do you think, Brian? How deep were you?
It would
Was
have
the
been, I don't remember exactly, but it probably would have been in the 200, 300, 400, 500 meter range. You know, deeper than the continental shelf, and
But in the
Is it
sunlight.
one of these
zone.
canyons?
I think we were a little bit further south, over on the after you make the turn south of.
Okay.
I think we're in the Mid-Atlantic, but I've done work in all of those canyons.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just thought it might be this paper.
Which paper is that?
This is Quattrini. What is it?
Oh
This
yeah,
one.
it was one of those dives.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm an author on that paper.
Yep, there you go. Very cool.
Canyon located, Harold?
Well, it's a range. He found the summary of the entire project that focused on basically all our work from the Mid-Atlantic up to the border with Canada. We lost you.
There are huge mountain ranges under the ocean. In fact, it's hard, I think, for a lot of us to comprehend the size of the mountains that these subsea ridges, they're just like the Sierra Nevadas or the Himalayas. How big can some of these mountains get, some of the largest ones?
I mean, the largest mountain on Earth is technically an island, but I have trouble thinking of these volcanic islands as anything but seamounts with emergent tops. But you know, the Big Island of Hawaii is the tallest mountain on the planet when you go from where it starts in the abyssal seafloor all the way up to the very top of Mauna Kea and Mauna Loa. And then, you know, the longest mountain range on Earth is the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, stretching basically all the way from the Arctic to the Antarctic, I think. So just an update on our progress. The ship has gotten to above roughly the 3,000 meter contour, but we've still got a good little wait for the vehicles to catch up as they're swinging through the water and catching up to where the ship is now parked. So still a little while to wait before we'll be ready to make contact with the bottom and start science ops.
Brian, one other question about this beautiful, clear blue water we're seeing. As you and I discussed this morning, it doesn't seem like there's that many large fish, but would you explain to folks that why there are larger fish and animals that are actually thriving here in this otherwise seemingly very clear and water that's looks like free of food? Yeah.
So, well, I mean, I would say this water doesn't look that free of food. All these little white dots and specks we're seeing is food, and seeing this level of concentration of particulate matter in the water column at 3,000 meters is a lot. And so I've got to assume there's even more shallower. We generally assume that there's a lot of loss in food from the surface waters down here, and seeing all of this in the water column at this depth implies to me that there's a lot up in shallower waters. But this area, has a lot of, there's something called the island mass effect, where you get an increase of primary productivity around islands and seamounts. And so having, the main islands of Palau, along with the seamounts to the north and south, and, the deep water masses flowing around down at 6,000 feet in the Palau Trench, hitting this, basically wall. I mean, we go from, I don't remember what the exact distance is, but from the deepest part of the Palau Trench to the island of Palau is only a couple tens of miles. So it's a huge wall from an oceanographic standpoint to go from some of the deepest water in the Pacific Ocean up to, breaking the surface. This is a massive wall that deflects all the current flow and moves around here. And anytime you get that mixing, you get deep water coming up, bringing those nutrients into the surface waters, which helps primary productivity, which then can, create a whole additional food chain or food web built on that. There's some good tuna fishing around here. There's a lot of large marine mammals that are known to live in this area. You saw some very large sharks in your drop camera work earlier this year, right? You saw 6 gills and sleeper sharks.
Yep.
You saw a hammer too, right?
Yeah, even a scalloped hammerhead shark around 500 meters.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
So
there are whales here too. You said that are filter feeders, filtering some of that food out.
And the big predators too. We've got sperm whale, pygmy sperm whales, probably several species of other beaked whales are all here. And so, they're chasing large squid and other fish all up and down the water column.
And another reason we might not be seeing many fish now is, the ROV is loud, it's noisy, it's got lights on it. It's not an ideal tool for sampling fish in this way, so we may be scaring some of the bigger things off.
Good point, Harold.
Well, while we're here, I would like to correct myself from yesterday. I think I got my meters and feet mixed up because I said the largest octocoral ever observed was 18 meters long, and it's actually, 17 or 18 feet long. So apologies there. Still a very large coral, but
still a very large coral.
I dug up the paper here.
That's a big animal.
It's this massive Iridogorgia magnispiralis.
Which is
5.7 meters long.
Which expedition was that?
This is somewhere in Hawaii, Les Watling.
Yeah.
And Harold, what is the common name of that animal? People would know it as?
This one, I don't know if it has an agreed upon common name, but sometimes we call it a firework coral. It really looks like a 4th of July firework explosion with its long, delicate branches and sort of spiral.
And we saw several. We've
structure.
seen several of these, same species or same genus over the last couple dives. This one was just particularly huge. Was magnispiralis?
Yep.
Okay. We were talking a lot about growth rates of corals a dive or two a day, and I just found a new paper that came out today documenting an exceedingly large black coral that was seen well north of here in the West Pacific, and they didn't do enough invasive sampling because it would have hurt the ancient colony to do it, but based on growth rate alone, they estimate the colony could be as old as 7,000 years old and a 30 centimeter diameter base.
Amazing.
Wow, where is this?
30 centimeter diameter base?
Yep.
Wow.
That's extraordinary. That would make them older than the what is the tree that on the surface?
Bristlecone pine.
Bristlecone pine. The oldest bristlecone pine is about how old?
I think
Isn't it
it's
2,000 or 3,000
on the
years?
order of 4,000.
4,000.
I don't know.
But this coral that you just described, Brian, is clearly older than the oldest bristlecone pine on the surface of the Earth.
Yep.
Yeah, I saw this paper in my inbox, but I couldn't get it to load. Ship's Wi-Fi. Wow. That is huge.
Yeah.
Has any Nautilus dives looked into bioluminescent stuff with all the lights?
Ooh, that's a good question. So to view bioluminescence, my understanding is that you need more of a low light camera system. And this setup is really optimized for flooding the seafloor with light so that we can see it and get pretty images of it using our cameras. And to really observe bioluminescence, what you need is a super low light camera, something like you would use to stargaze. And there are researchers now trying to put these starlight, low light cameras onto ROVs and film bioluminescence, but it's pretty difficult.
I bet. We were just talking about, because we have a sample jellyfish, and we hope to see the firework jellyfish. Wonder if you guys saw that highlight from 6 years ago. That would be cool.
Yeah, those jellyfish are really cool.
If I remember
And I wonder if
correctly,
they do glow. I don't know.
Have you guys ever swam and seen bioluminescence?
a couple
Yeah.
times, and actually one of the my ultimate favorite experiences about being at sea. I've seen this 2 or 3 times across my life. There's a jellyfish. Is you're in an area of heavy bioluminescent water, and you're on a ship at night, and the bow wake will glow. And so you look over the side and the bow wake will be glowing, which is cool in its own, but it gets unbelievably amazing when there are dolphins riding the bow in the bioluminescence. And so you can see the dolphins under the water cutting around, and you watch them glow, and they jump out of the water and they vanish as they're airborne,
Yeah.
and then there's this explosion of light when they re-enter the water. It's truly a magical experience.
Yeah, it doesn't get much better than that. I haven't seen anything quite like that, but once I was on Catalina Island off of Southern California, and there was bioluminescence at night, and we could snorkel, and you would move your hand through the water, and there'd be a trail of dinoflagellates, single-celled animals glowing. And there was a sea lion that was hunting, swimming under the dock, chasing fish, and you could see the glowing silhouette of the sea lion underwater, kind of like the dolphins. It was very, very cool.
Yeah, that is a great area for it. The best show I've ever seen was just offshore of the Channel Islands.
And the little those little animals are luminescing in distress. They're some things agitate them, so they give off the light as a defense mechanism.
Yeah, we don't fully understand why they do it, but yeah, every time you agitate the water, they glow. It could be, it's probably some type of defense mechanism. Yeah. I actually, kept a culture of bioluminescent dinoflagellates in my house for about a year as a houseplant.
Really?
Yeah. Got a nice pretty jar, kept them on my desk with a little grow light, and then at night I'd turn off all the lights and thump the glass, and they'd all light up.
Wow.
I kept the culture alive for about a year.
Was that very hard to do?
No, it was actually shockingly easy.
I'm surprised I don't hear about this all the time on TikTok or something.
The problem was you had to have all the lights off, and you had to let your eyes night adjust before you could see it. I mean, you could see it, but in order to really appreciate it, it wasn't. Yeah. And after, the first time I was like, oh, to all my friends, hey, come look at my bioluminescent algae. And they were like, I don't get it. Okay, it turned a little green. Great, Brian, you're a dork. But I liked it. I thought it was cool for a little while.
Yeah,
and it was
pretty
shockingly easy to maintain.
What did you feed your pet algae, Brian?
Sunlight. We had you can literally buy a commercially available seawater with the nutrients they require. And so just do water changes every once in a while, cut the colony in half, add some more water, and then just put a grow light on them.
Amazing.
A whole new kind of, you may have started here at Nautilus Live, a whole new line of pets that people may want to
That's a trend. That's something you can try at home for all of the millions of people watching this empty blue water stream right now.
I had dreams of much larger installation, but I think my wife wouldn't have let me do that.
I think it's a great idea. It's fascinating. And those bioluminescent trails behind ships were also a real problem in World War II for both American and Japanese ships that would give away their position at night as they moved through the water. Pilots could see them and attack them.
That's interesting that you bring that up, because there's one particular use of bioluminescence that's not unlike that, and that's the what's called the burglar alarm effect. So some jellyfish, bioluminescent jellyfish, will create a extremely dazzling bioluminescent display when they're being attacked by predators like small shrimps and amphipods that start nibbling on their flesh. And the purpose of this burglar alarm is to attract fish or other predators to come eat whatever is eating them.
Eat the parasites.
So, yeah, exactly. So it's a real predator-prey situation.
I have an experience in the Colombian Caribbean islands. I went there on a school trip, and our tour guide brought us into the middle of this channel of mangroves, and he said, jump in and swim, and this was nighttime. We jumped in, and the bioluminescence was so bright, like I could see my clothes and my whole body in the water.
Oh, that's cool.
And that was really crazy. And it was kind of scary because he just told us to jump in, and you can't see anything around the mangroves. And
Yeah.
And no
you're
explanation.
thinking,
Just
like,
jump in.
Yeah, just jump in.
Trust me.
And then you get out and they remind you there's crocodiles in the mangroves.
Yep.
Snakes.
Yeah, so that was pretty cool.
Now, is that a freshwater mangrove or
Saltwater.
Salt water.
Yep.
That's extraordinary.
Has anybody seen giant squids in a dive?
Only a few people ever have captured live giant squids on dives.
There's only a few images of them taken by cameras, still cameras or video. Only a few glimpses, I think, aren't there, Brian?
Yep, nope, that's correct. I don't know what the count is now. It's up from 1, which it was for a long time, but it's still, I think, in the single digits for times they've been caught in their natural habitat in the deep sea by cameras.
And they really get huge. These are the ones that sperm whales eat and, frankly, battle with, don't they? The really big ones.
Yep.
Yeah, going back to bioluminescence, if I remember correctly, the way that they captured the first image was a scientist named
They
Edith
kinda
Witter
trick it.
developed a device that was basically a bioluminescent bait designed to attract giant squid, and it was basically just a bunch of LEDs that would flash kind of like one of those jellyfish, and they used this bioluminescent lure to basically attract a giant squid and catch it on film.
And how big is that animal? How big can a giant squid get?
Well, before I spread more misinformation about how big things are, let me just look that up.
No, there have been sperm whales spotted that have giant, you often see sperm whales with scars around their head and their mouth from clearly battling with giant squid with their parrot-like beaks and their giant suckers.
Yeah, they're quite large. I think we'll get the exact number from here in a second, but they're approaching 10 meters,
yep,
including their tentacles.
Max size is around 10 meters
And
for
there's
males.
another very large squid species called a colossal squid that, to my knowledge, has not been imaged as an adult yet.
Not in its natural habitat.
Correct.
They've been seen at the surface alive, but dying.
And they live at what depth in the ocean? And
Well, we really don't know because we haven't seen many of them,
Yeah,
but they're generally thought to be more down around Antarctica, and we don't really have a good sense of their depth range or their behavior yet.
Yeah, the giant squid is more globally distributed, whereas colossal squid is really hanging out in the Southern Ocean.
So those are two different species of squid, giant and colossal?
Yes, two
Correct.
different species.
but
Both
you've got them
very
both here in
large.
Palau.
I don't know if we have colossal squids this far north, but
This far, yeah, we're at 7 degrees above the equator. That's astonishing. The number of animals that are unknown, still undiscovered, the species that no one knows anything about the ocean is extraordinary. And I know, having spent time with Dr. Robert Ballard, who's, of course, the founder, the creator of the Nautilus and this whole great organization, the Ocean Exploration Trust, telepresence, so many other extraordinary inventions and discoveries, has told me one of his things he wants to do is go into the ocean, Indian Ocean, around Madagascar, because he's convinced that if there's one type of blue coelacanth or a living fossil in waters around Madagascar, there are others. And we were talking last night, Brian and Harold, about what there are apparently are coelacanths in this, or at least in Indonesia, you said, I think. Wasn't it, Brian?
Yep, there's two species, one found around Madagascar and one found much further west, but in certain parts of Indonesia.
And a coelacanth is, as I recall, it's a fish that we see in the fossil record back to the time of the dinosaurs. It's got very rudimentary feet forming in its fins. Is that right? It's
so
ancient
they're
fish.
a lobe-fin fish, and so they have much more structure to their pectoral fins than ray fin fish.
And they're a really interesting example in phylogenetics and evolution because it sort of defies the concept of a fish. So one example that I just heard about in an audiobook I listened to called Why Fish Don't Exist, which is very good. But there's basically, if you put a coelacanth, a cow, and a salmon all next to each other, and you ask which one of these things is not like the others, which one is the least similar of the three, the answer is not the cow, it's the salmon. The lobed fin fish are more closely related to the rest of us tetrapods on land than they are the rest of the fish.
Yeah, copy that.
That's extraordinary. So for everyone watching this expedition, it's one of the great fascinations of it for me all these years. It's my 9th expedition. You do not know what you're going to discover. We could stumble onto a completely unknown species that science has never seen before. At any moment, we could see some type of animal or some type of new of coral that no one has ever seen before. So it's a constant discovery, expedition of discovery every day.
Yeah, and it just makes me want to stay up 24/7 just to wait for something.
It is
to
amazing.
happen.
You don't know what you're going to see. Well, Harold, I like your point that the ROV is noisy, thumps around a lot, makes got a lot of light, and so the animals probably feel it coming, see it coming, and head the other direction. They can.
Yeah, well, it makes you
talking
wonder,
about, John? I
what's
sneak up on them all the time. They never
what's
even
out there
see me
just
or-
beyond the
Sneak up on them, Dan?
I
the
sneak
lights.
up on them.
Dan is one of our ROV drivers, and he's done this enough. Dan, I bet, tell me, what kind of animals have you snuck up on, Dan, that you remember? Some of your
Snuck
favorite?
up on a fish the other day.
That's true. That he was blind. He was
I tried
blinded
it.
a bit.
I snuck up on a shrimp, but then he spotted me and he bolted. The shrimp spotted me and then bolted.
Did you all have a sperm whale come up and inspect the Hercules pretty closely?
Yeah, that's in our highlights reel. I wasn't on watch for that one.
Dan, what was one of your favorite things you've seen so far?
Favorite thing I've seen so far?
Yeah.
It's hard to say. It's been the first watch we had was just so spectacular.
Yeah, that
chasing
first
the
watch
rat tail
was
around was a lot of fun.
Which one, Dan?
Oh, we were. Jeff was in here and he was wanting to get a good look at this rat tail, and the rat tail was like totally not cooperating because they'd like turn away from the vehicle, and we finally got around and got some decent video of them. That was quite fun. I think, and I don't know, some of my favorite coral is always a cup coral for some reason. Just because one early on in my driving research vehicles around, one of the things we were doing, we were collecting dead cup corals off the overhang. You know, it was underneath. There was tons of them growing, and it was. And we got a few live samples as well, but they were mostly interested in the skeleton, and they were little teeny guys, and being able to get those off the rock without smashing the skeleton was very challenging, and we spent hours and hours. They were doing some DNA things, so we go other sites and find them. And I just thought they were amazing at that time. I'd never seen anything like it. And I still have one sitting in a windowsill somewhere. But the big corals with all the associates on them are pretty spectacular too.
They really are.
Yeah, they're pretty cool. So we have a question from a viewer. Does the ROV make a lot of noise underwater?
No, not really. It's just a little 20 horsepower pump on it, and believe it or not, a lot of the time the thrusters are, you know, they're not on all the time. We're on and off the thrusters quite a bit. You can actually, there's a couple clips of it floating around. We have a couple cameras on the vehicle with microphones in the camera, and you can hear the when the autos are on, you can hear the thrusters.
You can hear
go on and off.
What is the background? Or is there a background sound in the ocean, Dan? Like hearing? Could you hear whales or snapping shrimp or other animals in the water with the microphone on the camera?
No, I've never been able to. We've had hydrophones on the vehicles over the years, and some fancy software to, you know, filter out certain background noises. So I'd like try and filter out the noise from the machine and listen to certain frequencies.
I've been lucky enough in my time in Congress, as I'm also a very strong supporter of the United States Navy and the submarine forces in particular. I'm lucky enough to be on quite a number of nuclear submarines and spent the night, been on combat maneuvers. And I distinctly remember laying in the bunk at night in the Arctic, under the Arctic ice, and hearing very loudly, coming right through the hull, snapping shrimp.
Wow.
And the sound of whales singing to each other over great distances.
That must have been awesome.
Which was spectacular.
There was no way I would get one of those submarines, by the way.
Oh, there's lots of room. I mean, there's lots of room, and they're very, very safe. Nobody's going to find them. Nobody's going to sneak up on them.
Yeah, but you can't, like, walk out the door when you want to.
I know.
Like this thing,
No.
at least I could jump off the ship if I really, really wanted to get away from the people. You know, I could, like,
You know,
I could swim for it.
You're not getting off a nuclear submarine unless they except through the torpedo tube.
Yeah, like they do in the movies, right? That would be a Clive Cussler move.
Yeah. It's an extraordinary experience. Those things are like fighter jets going up, flying underwater. They're amazing.
I was listening to Dr. Ballard tell a story on, he spent like months on one of those, he couldn't tell me the full story, he would have had to kill me, but like 12 guys in a very small space. I forget how long he said it was, but it was like, you know, the size of my bathroom at home. And for months.
"12 guys in a room the size of your bathroom for months."
Yeah, that sounds pretty crazy. They would submerge them in the shallower water and then tow them out, and just the tow would be like weeks long before the mission even started.
That would be tough. Nuclear submarines in the U.S. Navy are big, lots of room, walk down hallways and living quarters, utility spaces, the bridge. They're all pretty roomy. Not like the World War II submarines, the old ones that are really small and cramped and a little, to me a little spooky. The new ones are very comfortable.
Yeah, I've been on a few of those at the various museums. There's one there in San Pedro, and I can't remember where the other one was. Maybe, isn't there one in Hawaii? A submarine museum?
Bowfin, I think.
Yeah, there's the Bowfin Museum.
Yeah, I think I've been on that one.
The submariners call all surface ships, they just call them targets. And they also have a saying, the submariners will say, you know, if something happened or something blew up, we weren't there. And you'll never know.
I mean, even the Navy vessels, they sleep like 3 to a row, right? 3 in the bunk rack.
Oh, yeah.
That's true.
I'm going to
You don't want to enjoy this
let Jake
blue
sit here for a
water?
few minutes, and I'm going to go get some food. Blue water makes me really hungry.
Well, so
Got to be getting close to the slope of this mountain.
3,000 meters and 1 PSI in the compass.
PSI. Well,
Does anybody have any estimates as to how far away we are from the slope of this big underwater mountain? Got to be getting close.
Yeah, it's gonna take a little while. We've got, yeah, about 300 meters to go.
See, we're not.
Swinging in.
Are you picking up that? I don't see the slope yet on the sonar.
Oh, no, we're too high up.
What's the range of the sonar that we're seeing here on the screen?
The scanning sonars are they're 20-meter divisions, the one on the left, and then 10-meter divisions on the right. But they're scanning outwards, not down. We do have some sonars that look downwards, but they have a range of about 100 meters. So when we're about 100 meters off bottom, we'll pick it up, which should be another couple hundred meters. Yeah.
Will the slope we encounter be fairly steep?
It'll be a little steep, yeah.
Did you say we have about 300 meters to go?
Yeah, we're waiting for the ROVs to settle out behind the ship. So when we tow the vehicles, they get laid back behind us, and now they're catching up. And the more wire that we have out, the longer that process takes. So it's kind of like a pendulum effect that we're waiting for.
Are the propellers, the motors on the Hercules helping and moving it forward to?
No, not at all. We have to wait for Atalanta to move too. So while Herc could drive ahead, we can't drag Atalanta.
Right. Atalanta, for the folks in the audience that are listening, could you describe, Megan, these two vehicles and which one's Atalanta and what function does it serve, and then Hercules with its dog on a leash like cable?
So we have what's called a two-body ROV system. Atalanta is a sled-style ROV. It works as sort of our eyes in the sky, and also compensates a little bit from the heave of the ocean at the surface. And Hercules is our bottom viewing ROV. It has all of the instruments and manipulator arms and sampling capabilities and really nice cameras in order to look really close at the bottom and fly around freely. So these two ROVs work closely together so that Atalanta can keep an eye on us when we're working on the bottom and pick up some of that heave from the surface, and allowing our ROV Hercules to be able to swim around and see what's what on the seafloor.
Dr. Ballard gave me a great explanation once of why there's these two vehicles working together, which he invented the concept of the dog on a leash, which is a Hercules, the vehicle that goes to the close to the bottom, as you said, Megan. When Dr. Ballard discovered the Titanic back in 1985, all he had, the pinnacle of science at that time, was essentially Atalanta, a robotic a vehicle that was essentially dragged by a cable behind the ship, and they only had cameras, visual, with lights, so that you can imagine that the ROV connected directly to the ship was moving up and down with the waves that were causing the ship to move up and down. And Dr. Ballard said he realized that the way to solve that was to have a second ROV that was like a dog on a leash and attached to the upper ROV, which is attached to the ship. So the upper ROV, Atalanta, could move up and down with the swells of the ocean, and it has absolutely no effect on the Hercules, which is moving very slowly and stably over the bottom of the ocean. It's a great concept, and one that Bob thought of along with so many other great inventions and discoveries.
Yeah, there are a number of different types of ROV styles. And so the style that we're using with the two-body system works really well for science. Another style of ROV you might see is an ROV with a tether management system, or TMS. This is sort of a cross between a two-body system and a single-body system, in that the TMS and the ROV itself will attach together as they descend to the seafloor. And then when they decouple, the TMS can pay out as much tether as it has, and the ROV can fly around freely. And then when it's time to recover, the ROV returns to the TMS, they couple together, and then they'll come back to the surface. But there's also single-body systems out there where the tether has a catenary in it. That catenary will absorb some of that heave, and so you don't necessarily need to have a depressor weight type sled in order to operate your ROV without too much tug from the surface. There are pluses and minuses to each system design, and which design you choose is usually based on what kind of science or what kind of operations you're trying to do and what works with your team and your technologies.
Getting close. Okay. Yep.
Yeah, we were settling out like over here, so almost 60 to 70 meters before. Got some beams.
So what, I'm sorry?
Oh, the Doppler is picking up on the seafloor.
Looks like the scanning sonar is beginning to get a hint of some land out there too.
That's good. Land ahoy.
Back at 3,000.
In that image, looking at the sonar, that land, it's about at maximum range. It was at 50 meters. Now it looks like it's coming into 40. We're 40 meters out. Is that right?
Each circle is 20 meters.
20 meters. So 20, 40, 60, 80 meters out. Is that about right?
Yeah.
And we're looking at a fairly steep slope on a big mountain there that we're flying into. Now, how will you control the forward movement of the, for example, of the Hercules and Atalanta and the inertia in the forward motion being drug on where these cables are extended out to 3,000 meters? Will you need to control on approach to be sure the vehicles don't strike the cliff?
If we're getting too close, we'll just come up on the winch. But it should just swing down and settle straight up and down vertically.
We're seeing a very bright line on the sonar, which represents the side of the cliff. And I have to tell you, being from Texas, that looks a little bit like a big cold front moving through the state.
Yep. Coming up.
For the audience listening at home on watching on the internet, would y'all agree, are we about 60 meters, 65 meters away from that cliff? Each circle is 20 meters. Is that about right?
Yeah, we're somewhere in like the 75-meter range out, I would say.
Do we have an estimate on how many more minutes until we reach the slope?
Soonish, but it's the ship stopped, and so it's a little bit hard to predict with the currents exactly how long it's going to take Atalanta to swing into position. But they're starting to come out of tow form. The pilots are starting to come out of tow formation and set up for exploration. So sooner rather than later, but still be another couple minutes.
But right now, it's essentially the forward motion of the vehicles from being towed that is causing them to approach the cliff.
Yep.
They're on a 3,000-foot cable, 1,000-meter cable.
So as we're getting set up here, we're on the west side of the plow trench on a big, moderately steep slope that leads all the way up into the shallows. So if we continued exploring to the northwest, which will be our primary direction of travel in this dive, we'd eventually hit the coral reef and shallows. We're going to be kind of hanging out in the bottom of a little ravine, or, you know, I won't call it a canyon, but kind of a depression between two smaller ridges, with the idea that that should concentrate some of the organic material and we'll have a higher likelihood of seeing some mobile fauna. And we might bounce back and forth between the steeper walls, trying to find some hard grounds as well. So.
And front row, once we get on bottom here, we want to take our first Niskin bottle.
Copy that. We have to, you guys haven't been in here before. Once we hit bottom, we got to do a little dance up here and system check and weight balance and stuff. I'll let you know when we're ready to sample.
No problem. Do what you got to do.
Say what? What is an excellent question. I think I'm good for now. We're still, I don't know, 80 meters behind the boat. See what happens here. See who wins the swing in or my patience. Usually my patience does not win. Because it's, you know, not one of my virtues. Yeah, let's run this thing down. I got 30 meters under me, so it'll chase me down.
Yep.
Usually when we're coming down, Jaden, one of the things I'll keep an eye on is Atlantis sonar. And we'll get a heads up from the navigator which way uphill is. So we'd like to come down with Hercules on the shallower side of Atlanta for what should be obvious reasons.
What do you want me maintaining the delta at, Dan?
We'll keep it about 20 for these original
and bottom in sight.
I hope that's just mud in the bottom of the canyon, and this is not a mud dive.
Chris, what's the contour spacing on HiPAC?
10 meters.
Thanks.
Okay, Jane, you can, I'll stop on the winch there if you haven't.
Roger.
And so we'll let it stabilize here for a minute, and I'm going to just get a feel for which way the wind's blowing and how our ballast is doing. But we usually take an on-bottom gauge check reading, and capture all the numbers. So we want to, this one's kind of like our baseline, if you will. So we know where we started as far as the, excuse me, as far as the comp levels and all that. So if we have to look back 6 hours from now or whatever,
Copy.
we've been at this depth for quite a while, so I'm going to say stuff's had a chance to settle out. And then this is also the double tap bug I talked about, so I will show you. So I don't think we've been in auto altitude yet. So the first time I engage auto altitude, you see the thrusters go to 100%. So it's trying to slam me into the seabed. So it's going the opposite way. If I engage auto depth, it's the auto depth bug. So now the thrusters are full up. So it's like 100% the opposite of what you want to do. So that's where whenever you switch between auto depth and auto altitude, you got to double tap it. We, for some reason, call it the double tap bug.
That's cute.
It is cute, and it occasionally gets me because I, getting old, forgetful. And oh yeah, well, why is Herc in the mud? And it slams you in quite nicely. Okay, you got to do some stuff too. I am not in auto XY at the moment, but I would like to be.
Oh, you're already set.
I'm already good?
Yeah.
You're efficient, Chris. Okay, ROV is at auto XY. In theory, it's why are you going, Herc? It's not supposed to be moving. That's another bug.
Auto XY bug?
Yeah, so
probably something about last state isn't initialized on startup or something.
No, I haven't actually used auto XY. Why? Look, when I engage it, the thrusters are all going full. Why are you doing that? That's a new one. Weird. Why? Huh. No. I thought maybe the button had something to do with it. Okay.
That's fun.
That's interesting. We'll have to make a note in the log for that when you get a chance. Or I'll chat one to the group. But
What was it?
Auto XY causes the laterals and horizontals to go to 100% to some position that only Hercules knows.
You got a lot of tether up high on Atalanta's view.
Roger. Yeah. Thank you.
You want me to pull up on Atalanta?
Let me stretch it out here. I drifted back towards you while I was distracted by auto XY bug.
Got a lot of variance in the USBL. I guess we're deep.
Yeah. Are you sure that that's not some mode that you have it in that's causing that?
I don't think. Yeah, solution or solution dead rec. See?
Roger. Don't we have to go into something else to? Can you tilt up a bit on Atalanta camera?
Roger.
Make sure our tether is not trying to huckle itself here in the beginning. And Amber, you're all good there for white balance.
All right, I'm gonna zoom in.
And I don't know what's going on here. Can you come up?
On the winch.
Yes, please.
Roger.
We tilt a bit so I have a little more of the white.
Roger. You call that white?
Oh boy. All right. Okay. All right, so we're gonna go dark first.
Roger.
Okay, and white. Do you have any other colors available to look at? No. Okay.
Looks green to me.
Yeah, it looks green to me. I'm gonna do it one more time.
White balance, recall 1.
Now let's actually see what that looks like.
It's going somewhere where it can like never get to. Or the gain's all wonky. That's what's happening. Look at it.
You got all gained.
What is the...
You got mad gains, bro.
Yeah, somebody's been playing with the PID loops. What do you want to bet? It would take me half an hour to find a picture of what they're supposed to be. Robert? You listening? Robert? You've been playing with the PID loops again? Yeah, so it's not wandering. So you can update that entry in the logbook. It's not wandering off forever. It's just, it looks like the...
Oh man, red balance.
The PID loops are wonky, so it can never get there, so it's oscillating. Good thing I have 2 engineers here. Maybe they can tune that stuff.
Jaden and I almost never crashed things into piers and stuff, so. Almost never.
How much bottom time does that take?
I want to hit this one more time, guys. Thanks
Roger.
for your patience.
Can you do me a favor?
Yeah.
Or I'll actually, never mind, I'll text Jake.
I think that's about as good as I'm going to be able to get it.
You're running away, Dan.
Roger. It's not going to go that far. It's on a tether.
Yeah, now it's going back. That is, yeah, you definitely got some wacky gains. Either that, like, maybe it does almost look like it is trying to use the USBL. Because, like, it's doing discrete jumps, like, as the USBL updates. Am I missing something here?
Yep.
Do you want me to write anything in the book about that?
Just, yeah, that auto XY is useless. Wonky. I don't know. Use your judgment there. All right, sorry, Amber, are you done?
Yeah, I'm good.
Roger.
Well, don't put the arm too far away. First thing we want to do is trip a Niskin, please.
Roger. All the gauges were good?
Yes. Main comp is back up to 1.
3,000 meters and 1 PSI in the main compensator. We're living on the edge. All you need is 1 PSI, so we're good.
Navis source. Solution Dedrick. Yeah.
I'm going to take the Niskin while you're poking around there.
Try it now.
I've been in auto XY the whole time, just over gaining around. You can see my thrusters are.
There's a couple things that are right here that I can't tell what they are yet.
Can you go wide and open the iris just a bit for me? So all of our proportional valve settings are going to be low because we're deeper than we have before, so we probably have to muck with those. Like that retracts super slow there. It looks like we should probably try and shoulder up on that Orion a bit. I'll do that in a
Looks
minute.
like maybe position hold's working now.
What'd you do?
Nothing.
Okay.
I re-clicked send position source. Maybe.
And could someone tell the audience listening, watching this on the internet, what are those balls? What do they represent? What are you attempting to do, Dan, with the arm by pulling on ball number 1?
Those are printed with PLA plus on our Bamboo X1 carbon. And yes,
Hashtag not a sponsor.
we do accept PLA plus donations. If anyone's listening, you can send them to care of Nautilus. Those are.
What sample number was that?
That is sample number 32.
Okay.
But so what we just did is we collected a water sample. So for the Palau National Marine Sanctuary has an eDNA monitoring project. And so we're going to be collecting water sample at various depths along the dive today that'll then be filtered to collect the DNA and then to help us get a better sense of what lives out here and provide a baseline for long-term monitoring.
And there's room for 6 samples, Brian. Clearly there's 6 balls. As you pull on it, it sucks in a sample of water from the around the Hercules.
Yep, so we've got 6 Niskin bottles on the port side of Hercules, and so they're just basically tubes with 2 watertight ends, and when Dan grabs the ball with the nuclear and pulls it, it trips a little release, and both ends just slam shut with a giant rubber band. And it'll keep the water separated all the way up to the surface.
It's a giant PVC tube with some urethane.
All right,
Rubber
you
bands.
ready for request, Dan?
Yeah, I think so.
Or you want to start, Jeff?
Can you come up 5 meters?
Just up
right
and to the
under.
left, Dan, there's a something lying on the seafloor over there. It'd be great to take a look at.
Roger. And turn all these auto functions off.
Dan, did you say to come up?
Yeah, let's come up to 20. If I'm within 1 square RV, let's keep it at 20 there. You can see the tether bouncing up above you
So
there.
a little more to the left. We might want to zoom out some more if we can, just so we acquire this target. There it is. That.
Roger.
This looked like maybe it was a broken piece of coral or just a stick that has fallen downhill. We weren't sure, but let's get a zoom on it.
Yeah, go ahead, Amber.
Okay, zooming.
Deep sea botany.
Yep. So one of the interesting things about trenches in this part of the world is that...
Seagrass?
Oh, wow. Okay, so it looks like there's branches, and there's seagrass, and there may be bits of algae or something, but mostly seagrass. So we are on the slope into the trench, and there's basically nothing between... It's just a slope between the island and the bottom of the trench, and so any of the material from the forests of Palau or the seagrass beds is just going to fall downhill. And we've actually found in some other trenches in the other parts of the world, this one's not well studied, but this material accumulates down here and actually provides additional food for the animals that live in trenches. And so when you get to the very deepest parts, which unfortunately we can't explore today, but if you get down to below 6,000 meters in some of these trenches, there's actually more life than there is shallower, because all of this food is kind of funneled downhill because the bottom of the trench is the deepest place around. Okay, well, let's keep moving up slope.
So looking at the scanning sonar, there's a really steep wall right here. Any interest in seeing the wall, not coming up it, but seeing that hard ramping? So instead of heading straight up the center of the thing, can we swing over and investigate that hard target in the scanning sonar?
Sure.
Jeff, yesterday we saw a coconut
to the south and
on the bottom, and you said that coconut represented how many years of food?
Oh, yeah, I don't want to give a precise number, but decades of food. It's, you know, there's so much energy in a coconut. If it stays in the same place, it doesn't roll around. It's just a huge input of food to a single spot in the deep sea. It's not the kind of food that's easily accessible by fishes or shrimps or things like that, but microbes can use that, and they can break it down, and you'll end up with worms and sea urchins and crabs and things like that eating the microbes, the bacterial mats that'll grow on that wood, and then that in turn will feed other animals in the area.
You want me to scooch over that way a little, Dan?
Roger.
Those are 20-meter rings? Okay.
Yeah.
Bridge, nav 20 meters, 180. That'll work.
While we're waiting for a little tether, can we get a little closer to the seafloor and kind of poke around for what small stuff that might be living in the sediment?
Roger. Give me 1 second.
And what we're seeing here on the bottom, it looks like is this white looks like almost like mud is the accumulation of that snow coming down from above, which is made up of so many different things and provides a food source for some of these animals.
Yeah, there's just sand and mud, and then, yeah, it's the seafloor accumulates all that marine snow. And what's really interesting here is that in addition to that marine snow, if you look at these little brown sort of stick-like looking pieces, I think a lot of that is eelgrass. Is
grass?
Basically eelgrass or the marine grasses that grow up in the shallows off of the island of Palau. This is what the dugongs eat. But some of that is going to break off in waves and swells in shallow water, and clearly it's making it all the way down here.
So the eelgrass grows on land at the shoreline?
It grows just below. It's actually a marine grass. It is a flowering plant, and it grows underwater, and it's what manatees and dugongs and things like that will eat. They'll graze on in shallow water.
Yeah, gonna need more leaves.
But there's just lots of little bits of it here.
Atlanta hasn't moved yet,
That's a
Chris.
leaf right there. It's a leaf on the seafloor.
That is a leaf.
All right.
Okay, that's max zoom on me.
All right.
Oh, can we zoom in on that right there?
We are zoomed in.
That is possibly an amoeba-like organism or a protist called a xenophyophore, but we need to zoom in to be able to tell for sure.
We are zoomed in, Jeff.
Okay.
And we're
It is small.
We're about 1 meter up. I can come a little lower, but
Nope, that's good. I just didn't know where we were.
If I touch the mud here, we're gonna.
Yeah, it'll create a cloud. We don't want to do that.
Well, I can land, but then we'll have mud on Herc and we'll drag it around for a while. So
yeah,
I'm happy to do that if you want to.
Nope.
Get
if we are
good,
fully zoomed, that's what.
Yeah, that's why it's bouncing all around there.
No worries.
But I can land gently. I mean, I was gonna avoid landing unless.
No, that's pretty good. I can kind of see it right there. I'm pretty sure that's a xenophyophore.
Right. Let me see if I can probably come a little lower here. Where'd it go?
Here, I'll go wide.
These are super weird because they're a single-celled organism, but they build a macroscopic structure that you can see with the naked eye.
Well,
it's very weird.
I haven't drifted that far, have I?
It was near the bottom of your frame.
It was just above. It's right there. Oops. It's just above the black leaf.
I thought it was just above the leaf, but
yeah.
I've come up now. Sorry. Well, come on, where?
I think that might be another one right there.
Yeah, possibly.
I don't have any Z bias on yet, so give me a second here to play with this thing. I can get it where it will. Be a little more stable.
Okay, I'll see what's going on in a second.
Is that it in the top of the screen, or?
Right there.
Roger, thank you. So, sorry, I didn't have any trims in there. I was being gross relying on the autos, but they're not that.
But it's almost perfectly camouflaged.
Yeah, it just makes its house out of all the sand grains around it, so it just looks like the background.
Nice.
Contact. Okay, now you can zoom in.
Okay, zooming.
Ooh, that's quick.
There we go.
Sorry,
No,
I'm still playing with the adjustments.
No, that's great right
That's
there.
back zoom for
We can
me.
see.
Nice.
Oh, look at that.
Very, very small.
Yeah, and you can see all the little individual grains of sand that this organism has made its house out of.
Now, what are we seeing here, and what does it eat?
So it's eating detritus. It's eating, all the bits of marine snow that are falling down to the seafloor. And it just keeps growing this house. And we're finding that there are some kinds of other animals, nematode worms and little crustaceans called isopods and other things that will eat these as well. And they can take organic material that's really pretty hard to digest and convert it into biomass in this structure here that other animals can eat. Okay.
Shell is made up of what?
Sand and mucus. So if we were to try to collect that, it would just fall apart.
Doesn't sound like much of a meal, but to some of those creatures down there, it's a good meal.
Yeah.
We could slurp it.
Nope. We're gonna let this one be, Dan.
Because I am landed. I had to focus there. I was, guilty of playing around with something else.
There is one paper where they found fish eggs inside one.
I don't think we're gonna find.
No. This one's way too small.
No.
We also
I think
have
we're gonna take off and we're gonna head towards that outcrop feature. That
We also
Brian
have
would
a
like
scoop.
to see.
But it is super interesting to think about even a single-celled organism like this being an ecosystem engineer forming a physical substrate and habitat complexity. You have this with xenophyophores. You have these shallow water stromatolites in Australia, microbial mats. These are now being recognized as microbial structure-forming habitats, sort of
I'm gonna go ahead and put it
functioning in similar ways to corals and sponges.
Yeah,
even
you're
though
gonna
they're
have
just
to be a little
single-celled.
more gross.
Bridge nav 30 meters due south.
So something to take into consideration, kids, is the at this depth we moved. Chris made a 20-meter vessel move. What was it? 10 minutes ago.
Yeah.
And Atalanta has moved maybe 2 meters. I'm sure Jeff's a lot more familiar with this because they operate Lukai at twice this depth.
Yep.
So any requests or vessel moves, might say, oh, it's only 20 meters away, but it could take literally half an hour to get there.
Yeah.
So
And we need to keep going in the same direction. That way we can ask for bigger vessel moves. And
Roger. Once
Yeah.
we get the pendulum swinging, as it were, or as I say, the whole mess moving. Yeah. So any stops. So we'll have a bit more of a significant layback. So the opposite happens if we want to stop and look at something. If we're moving at our typical 10 meters a minute, so if I keep my typical 20 meters of leash, tether out in front of Atalanta, that means you have 2 minutes before Atalanta's running over the top of us, and at the extreme, I have maybe 4 minutes before Atalanta's moved far enough past us to start dragging Hercules along the seabed, and we'll go tail to tail, and it'll take forever to get back around. So yeah, we can sample on the fly and look at stuff on the fly, but I generally, the more we stay out ahead of Atalanta and keep the whole mess moving, the more ground we'll cover in the end.
It's good to know.
And
Thanks,
if we
Dan.
if we get into
Thanks,
like a dense area that you think you might want to sample, what we can do is start doing step moves with the vessel, so we pause longer between the moves, so that'll reduce the layback, so the time that we have to wait for Atalanta to...
Great.
So
Okay.
yeah, some little tricks there to make your experience more enjoyable at 3,000 meters.
Okay, well, let's start heading towards that rock outcrop.
Yeah, still waiting on Atalanta. So you can see my little, just for a reference here on the nav screen, in my 2D world, those are 10-meter boxes I try and keep. So I try and keep 2 boxes out in front of Atalanta, 20 meters out. So we have a 30-meter tether, and that goes typically out. Atalanta's 20 meters above us. We fudge those numbers all the time. Get further away, then we reduce the delta between Hercules and Atalanta, which I kind of typically operate in the lower delta further away. That gives me more time to stop and smell the flowers. I think this tether is actually 35 meters, so I could put a little more in the bank. Dr. Ballard prefers this Atalanta to be closer to Hercules. He likes to see his ROV.
All right. Coming up on the side of the ravine here. Still pretty sedimented. Kind of surprised for as steep as it is.
That's me. So I'm stretched out there at the moment.
All right.
Which means I can't really turn a lot, but we can come up it if you want, or...
No, we want to stay down here. I kind of wanted to see what the transition was to the rock face, but we want to stay kind of in the bottom of the ravine, so if we want to start heading kind of perpendicular to, parallel to the course, we moved over here, kind of moved past, it's a little south of waypoint 5 or whatever's fine.
Roger. How tall do we think these walls are? It's going to pop up and have a
Might be reasonably tall, I don't know. And we don't have to maintain contact on them. I wanted to see the transition over here. If we want to slide back a little bit away from it, that's fine too.
No, I want to get closer to it. If it's not very tall,
I
we
reached
can...
out to Mike, the network data, so hopefully they'll get them back online.
Yeah, you can start moving there, Chris. Let's move Atalanta about half the distance closer.
Roger. Okay, you still got a bit of swing, but...
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, there's the... That's where nav makes the big bucks.
All right. Bridge now.
Maybe
Let's do another 20 meters due south. I can always back us up too.
Yeah, you can also split the difference, so you can like take off this way or something.
Oh, you want to start heading up?
Yeah.
All right. I'll do a compound move.
There you go.
Yeah.
Compound is when the navigator gives the vessel a move in X and then a move in Y, and gets Atalanta to cut the corner. Yeah, so he's doing forward and left, and the pendulum 3,000 meters away is doing this beautiful circle and comes in the perfect distance from the cliff for us to mosey along.
So I was at dinner.
I'm going to start
gonna
actually just moving up this way.
Roger.
Because I think it's going to start coming up.
Yeah.
Bridge, let's cancel the last move and do 290, 30 meters. Affirmative. Okay.
So
I think
Brian,
it's gonna
you were
it's gonna
talking
start.
about the sediment?
It'll like yoink
What's
it
that?
around as we start going up.
Sorry.
Yeah. So what we
Oh,
were
it's
looking
back
at the
row.
last couple of dives, we were further offshore, and so there wasn't like terrestrial sediment input really. We were only looking at most of the stuff coming down with either extremely fine grain and had been suspended in the water column for, months to get out there, or was something that was biogenically created. Here, because we're so much closer to a huge coral reef system, lots of shallow waters, get some land with different types of igneous rock that is all eroding and washing down. So we have a much heavier sediment load here than we seen in the last couple dives.
I'm going the wrong way. I need to go that way, right?
Yeah.
Thank you. So this is all...
Wait. That way is in that way?
Yeah.
Okay, that's to your right, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Camera map left or camera right.
I get them backwards all the time. You know that. I'm dyslexic.
Uh-huh.
Has anyone seen any bioturbation yet? I haven't really seen any whatever that German word is that I will never try and pronounce. Feeding traces. Yeah.
Well, Brian, you're saying like extreme sediment is what we're seeing here? This is not like native mud?
Sorry, I don't say it again.
All this is this extreme sediment rate is what we're seeing here?
Pretty much.
It's not just
Is that a bad thing?
No, it's perfectly normal for this kind of environment. I mean, it's just different than where we were out on the seamounts yesterday. Can we look at the urchin, please?
Urchin. Wow, I couldn't even see that.
Urchin?
Might be, I don't know yet. It's fine, you're right.
Brittle
There's
star?
arms. It's probably, I don't
It's
know.
an echinoderm.
We'll see here in a minute. It's a echinoderm.
That's what we know.
Can you turn on the lasers?
You're right, it's probably not an urchin now that I look at it again. It's just got such a huge central disc.
Okay,
Yeah,
go
that's
ahead,
interesting.
Amber. When I first saw the seabed here, I was thinking it was that really yucky clay mud that's really sticky.
I wouldn't be at all surprised if...
That's an Opheroid.
World?
Wow.
Opheroid?
Yeah.
Brittle star.
We're going to need to collect that.
It has such an inflated disc. This is very different than the ones we saw on the seamount yesterday.
Yeah.
Collecting.
That's quite odd.
So
I'm going to back us up a little bit before we yank you out of here.
Brittle star, yep.
Bridge
an
nav. Let's hold position.
Central disc.
Move.
Yeah, basically the body in the middle.
20 meters, 110.
Wow.
I have to admit, I'm not 100%. Are you sure it's an Opheroid and not an asteroid?
No.
Because look at the way the arms taper into the body. I'm not entirely convinced that is a brittle star.
Chris Ma, where are you?
Well, if we get a close look, which we are going to do, if the arms are segmented, it's a brittle star, and if they aren't, it's an asteroid.
Yep.
What a segment.
Lots of little pieces, like the vertebrae in a backbone. So in the arms of brittle stars, they have lots of little pieces in their arms, all connected one to the next. But sea stars don't have that. They just have a big arm.
Come on.
Oh.
Did it just deflate?
I think it flipped. Oh, maybe you're right.
Broke in half.
Oh, wow.
Was
Do
it
you
dead?
want eyes on the bio box, Dan?
Are those segments on the arms? I can't tell.
Here, I can zoom in a bit more.
Yeah, you can
It almost looks like it
change
was
to the starboard box. Right?
had been hollowed out.
Huh.
Oh, that's very cool. That looks more like a sea star than a brittle star.
On this one, we're going to want to press craft. That helps me bring the armor up. Okay, we're how are we
somewhere
doing on
smallest
time?
box you can fit it in.
Roger.
Well, that's a different one. I have many questions.
You can open the box there for me.
You're close to the edge there, not yet.
Let's see it.
Don't drag it.
I think we just made Chris Maw's day, though. He's going to be so happy to get this.
Yep.
Not in the box yet.
Yeah, I'm not seeing anything like that in our guide here.
I've never seen anything quite like it.
That was different. Yep, neither have I.
Bridge nav. Let's do 10 meters, 045.
And the way it broke apart also is weird.
You want to, we're doing okay here. If you want, we could pick up the other piece or suction it.
Yeah, why don't you? This is unique enough that let's take the time and get the other piece too.
Yeah, I agree with that.
You want to burn a sample jar or you want me to try and pick
If
it
you
up?
can pick it up, that would be ideal.
What sample number was that?
That's sample 33.
Okay.
If I hadn't just seen it break off, I would say that looks like a crab leg or something.
Yeah, now it does, totally.
Yeah.
It looks like almost like a molt.
Are you full zoom there, Amber? I don't know if I see any meat in there, do you?
Still not. There's something. I mean, there's that green stuff. But, I mean, there's definitely tissue. All right, I don't think we're going to learn much more until we get it up on deck.
Roger. Okay.
There is a red wall
Can
coming up.
close the box.
Yeah, I'm backing us off from it. Trying to.
That is a red ball of death.
Yeah.
So we still have the
Want
box
me to
open?
close the box,
Yeah.
Dan?
Yes, please. Yep, yep, yep. all my settings here at some point. You're looking right at the wall?
No, I'm not, but I can turn toward it.
Yeah, come up, let's come up 5 meters. Need to clean myself off anyways. It is sticky mud. You can see it on the front of Herc's porch there. It's gonna haunt me for the next half an hour.
This is where Hercules does its shake like a dog thing to knock off all the mud.
Yeah. I've been known to grab the porch with a manipulator and just shake it. Then I get a text from Josh, stop doing that. Yeah, I got the major chunk fell off. Okay, I wanted to go that way, right?
Yeah.
Right turn,
Map
Clyde.
that way.
Right turn, Clyde. Are we on the flush jar? Can you change over and see if we're on the flush jar? Could center that jar up and then turn the slurp on and
It's a different color.
I stuffed that nozzle in the mud there.
That is a very
So
cool
Go
steep
back
wall
to the red one.
Roger.
with all this fine sediment and mud just hanging
Another
on the
click
side.
on it. It's not quite centered up there. Might have to go past it and then back.
Bridge
If
nav.
you're in a happy spot.
20
look at
meters, 310.
There we go.
You might have to turn your props up a little too. Try that. Turn that PRV all the way up and see if you can blast the mud out of the slurp.
All right.
Might take it a few minutes to clear out there. Yep. That'll save us some time if we're in a hurry on the next sample to have it cleaned out. I'll try not to stuff it again. And yeah, I'm right under you, so you're gonna have to come up.
All right. Are you happy with the suction?
Yep. Secure that. I forget, this is a longer tether, so you come up. Let's try 25, see how that looks.
Roger.
That's why I got tangled up yesterday. This tether's 5 meters
Oh.
longer.
Oh.
Yoink.
Yeah, we're tangled up again. We're gonna have to run a higher delta.
I think we probably got a good enough look at that for an ID, so we can keep going if you want to stretch out.
Roger.
So what is it?
Oh, sorry, that's a type of holothurian or sea cucumber. They're move along the bottom and vacuum up the sediment. And actually, Jeff, your lab's doing some really cool work on the trophic dynamics with them, right?
Yeah, so in my group, one of the graduate students in the lab, Lee Miller, is doing some fascinating work using stable isotopes to look at the diets of these animals. And it turns out that they pick up all the grains of sediment, basically the mud from right off the surface where all the marine snow is landing. But that marine snow is a food supply that's really hard for animals to digest. It's like kind of leftovers. So they have this gut microbiome and all these bacteria, which have all these ways of using really hard to digest material. They pick that stuff up, they use it inside the gut of the sea cucumber, and they grow. And in some way we're not entirely sure of yet, the sea cucumber then uses all of those products that the bacteria make.
Come up a few more meters.
So they're basically just crawling around as a
turn your
big
head to look at her.
microbial reactor.
Roger.
And the microbes in their gut are basically making the food for them. It's really cool.
Wow, that's clever.
I think
That's
it's
good.
leaf.
Yep, just a leaf.
Roger.
Never mind.
Is that for most species of sea cucumber?
So much plant
That is
matter.
a great question. The answer is no. In shallow water on the reefs, Lee has done work showing
bringing
that sea
your head around there
cucumbers eat all the detritus
Yep,
on the
bringing it around.
seafloor, but there it's pretty fresh. It's basically dead plankton, and they just consume it directly. It's only when you get very deep down, typically below, we're not so sure of really the depth, but once you get into
Yeah, it
many
looks like it fell
hundreds or
down there,
1,000
yeah.
or 2
What's
meters
that?
of water,
Looks like the tether fell off.
then the situation with the bacteria
Okay,
seems to
so
become
yeah.
much more important. So it depends on how fresh the food is. Fresh food, they don't bother with the gut microbiome as much. Really digested food already, then they do.
Interesting.
Nope. It's 2 days in a row. Try turning your head to the left.
Left.
Yeah.
Roger.
Looks like we got a different type right here.
How far
Also
left?
a sea cucumber.
90 degrees. Sorry, Brian, you gotta stand by for a minute. I'm
Sure.
tangled up again. That's good. Hold that.
I think I've seen 3 types of sea cucumber so far.
Yeah, when you get down in the depths, the echinoderms really become a major, much more major player. I mean, not much more. They seem to be more common to me, or at least as a percentage of things we see. The echinoderms are become one of the larger kind of macrofauna groups you see.
Can't tell which side it's on. Really wish I had a camera up there. I'm gonna have to come up for a look. Let's say we went the wrong way again. Usually I can pull it around and pull it off. Try come 180 clockwise.
Roger.
I totally forgot about this too long tether. Yeah, that's what I wanted to see. Okay. I should be able to pull you around now, in theory. Which I did. Okay, good. That's 0 for 2. 2 days in a row, and twice I picked the wrong direction. I just pick one at random. There's no logic to it whatsoever. Well, there was kind of trying to judge which way the tether's going off. So that's 1, 2, yeah. So extra 5 meters is what's killing me. I think we gotta keep the delta like above 20, especially if see our spread now. So we're tail to tail there.
Keep it above 20.
Yeah.
Right.
Usually, yeah, that extra 5 meters is hard to manage, especially even on a tethered vehicle. I usually operate with 25 to 30 meters out. Should be